the world still feels the echo of that devastating night in Paris, August 31st, 1997, when Princess Diana's life was taken in a crash that shattered hearts across the globe. Has passed, but the pain lingers, and now, decades later, disturbing new details have surfaced from the scene of the crash. What investigators found inside the car was not only tragic, it was chilling. Haunting fragments of evidence paint an eerie portrait of her final moments. And the discoveries continue to raise unsettling questions about what really happened to the people's princess. In the quiet hours of that early morning, the Ponte de l'Alma tunnel, a crumpled black Mercedes lay crushed against a concrete pillar. Inside was Diana, beloved, compassionate, iconic, barely clinging to life. The image of that wreckage is burned into the memory of a generation, but the deeper truths hidden in the chaos remained elusive for years. When authorities finally combed through the wreck, what they uncovered told a story more disturbing than anyone expected. This wasn't just an accident. Excellent. This was the climax of a night spiraling out of control. That night had started innocently. Enough. Diana and Dodi Fade had returned to the Ritz Hotel in Paris, dodging a hounding crowd of paparazzi. Their plans for a quiet dinner had collapsed under the weight of flashing cameras and relentless whispers. The pressure was mounting, and in the shadows of the hotel's luxurious halls, a desperate decision took shape. Avoid the front. Use the back exit. Fool the photographers with decoy cars. Slip away into the night. The real getaway car, black Mercedes S28, waited in the shadows. Inside were Diana, Dodi, bodyguard Trevor Rees-Jones, and at the wheel, Henry Paul, a senior security officer at the Ritz. But as they pulled away, hope for escape vanished in an instant. The paparazzi were not fooled. Motorcycles revved to life, their tires screeching as they gave chase. Witnesses described a frenzy, flashes of chrome, shouting voices. The roar of engines weaving recklessly through the streets of Paris. Instead of taking the safer route back to Dodi's nearby apartment, the Mercedes hurtled forward into the tunnel. In a heartbeat, the world changed. The car struck the 13th pillar at terrifying speed. The impact was violent. Dodi and Henry Paul died on the spot. Trevor Rees-Jones, battered and broken, barely survived. Diana, critically injured, was still breathing when help arrived. But even then, the scene was madness. Cameras kept clicking. Flashbulbs lit up the dark. Paparazzi stood just feet away as medics fought to save her life. In the days that followed, the physical wreckage became a symbol of grief, but it was also a trove of troubling details. Conflicting reports surfaced. Timelines clashed. Official statements raised more doubts than answers. Inside the crushed vehicle were signs that something was deeply wrong. Why had the driver chosen a dangerous route? Impaired? Manipulated, or was this something darker? All eyes turned to Henry Paul, the man behind the wheel. Wasn't just a chauffeur, deputy head of security at the Ritz. He was a trusted figure, experienced and calm under pressure. But that night something changed. After clocking out, at 7 p.m., Paul vanished for nearly 3 hours. No one knows exactly where he went. When he returned just before 10 p.m., stepped back into duty and into the role of getaway driver for one of the most scrutinized couples on Earth. Official reports later claimed Paul was drunk 3 times over the legal limit, but what the blood tests insisted on paper didn't match the man seen on surveillance footage. The tapes showed him composed, articulate, even lighthearted. He greeted colleagues warmly. He bent to tie his shoes, laughed, and carried out his duties with unshaken clarity. If he was truly intoxicated, it didn't show. That contradiction sparked a storm of speculation. How could the tests say one thing and the cameras another? Was there a cover-up? A manipulation of evidence? Or something even more sinister hiding beneath the surface? Even now, the questions remain. The tunnel in Paris has long since fallen. Silent, the world has moved forward. But for those who remember her compassion, her courage, and her radiant humanity, the story of Princess Diana's final night still hurts. The facts uncovered in the wreckage aren't just cold data there. The shattered pieces of a story that feels heartbreakingly unfinished. And the truth, wherever it lies, still waits in the shadows of that tunnel. The romantic image so many had clung to of Diana on the brink of a new chapter, perhaps even starting a new family, was fading. Still, speculation refused to die. At the symbolism of the ring, the timing of Dodi's purchase, the intimacy they shared during that final summer, all of it fed the hope that Diana had found something rare and real. And perhaps, in some way, she had. But whether or not there was a proposal, a pregnancy, or simply a deep connection between two people fleeing the constant glare of the public eye, the truth now rests in the silence of that night. There was more found in the wreckage than just mangled steel and shattered glass. Among Diana's personal effects were items that told their own quiet story. A purse, lipstick, a watch frozen at the moment of impact, and somewhere in that destroyed car, a boxed ring still sealed, untouched, and never worn. Back in the tunnel, as investigators pieced together the last seconds of the crash, questions multiplied. The presence of the Fiat Uno raised suspicions that refused to go away. If it made contact with the Mercedes, why was it never found? Why did so many key details seem to vanish into thin air? Why did James and Cinnamon, linked to both the car and the scene, end up dead under such bizarre, unexplained circumstances? A burned-out car in a remote forest? No lighter, no note, and a body so completely destroyed that even forensic analysis struggled to confirm the basics. Was it suicide, something meant to look like one? Diana's final hours now read like the pages of a mystery novel. High-stakes decisions, suspicious disappearances, missing cars, conflicting reports, and fragile pieces of a love story that may have been more serious than anyone knew. In those final moments, she wasn't just a princess. She was a woman caught in a storm of flashing lights, shifting loyalties, and decisions made in shadows. A woman possibly on the edge of a new life when she never got the chance to live. Even now, the world remembers her not just for how she died, but for how she lived. The kindness, the courage, the connection she built with millions who had never met her. But in the silence that follows the chaos of that night, the questions still remain uneasy, unanswered, and unwilling to fade. Some believe the crash was the tragic result of bad luck, bad timing, and relentless paparazzi. Others are convinced it was something darker, calculated, covered up, and sealed by silence. Whichever story you believe, one truth stands unshaken. Something went terribly wrong that night in Paris. And while the world lost a princess, it also lost a mother, a friend, and a symbol of hope. Beneath the surface of the official reports, behind the headlines and conspiracy theories, lies a deeper grief, one that speaks to a sense of injustice that can't quite be named. And maybe that's why all these years later, still find ourselves asking the same haunting question. What really happened to Diana that night? A nightmare, relentless glare made it nearly impossible for the medical staff to focus, adding an unbearable weight to an already tragic scene. Trevor later described how the photographer's presence felt like an intrusion into the most vulnerable, private moment of a life slipping away. For Diana, who had spent years under the harsh spotlight of the public eye, that final invasion seemed cruelly fitting. Her last breaths captured not in dignity or peace, but amid the cold, unyielding flash of cameras. It was as if the world refused to let her go, desperate to hold on to every fragment of her story. Even as it unfolded in chaos and heartbreak, the paparazzi's pursuit had followed her relentlessly that night, pushing her and her companions into a frantic attempt to escape. The chase was more than just a pursuit. It was a storm of flashing lights, roaring engines, and panic that blurred reason and safety. In their hunger for the perfect shot, the photographers created a dangerous pressure cooker, driving the car faster and faster, deeper into the tunnel, into disaster. Even now, debates rage over their role. Were they merely witnesses to tragedy, or did their obsession contribute directly to it? The question lingers like a shadow over the event, a reminder of the dark side of fame and the costs of living in a world where every moment can be captured, commodified, and consumed. Amidst the chaos, Diana's story is not just one of loss, but of humanity exposed the fragile intersection of privacy and public life, love and tragedy, hope and heartbreak. Her legacy is complicated and raw, a reminder that beneath the headlines, beneath the rumors and speculation, was a woman who deserved more than the relentless glare of the world. And as the years pass, the world still wrestles with the many layers of that night, seeking answers, demanding justice, mourning a life cut too short, holding on to the memory of a princess who was more than a symbol. She was a beacon of compassion and courage in a world that often forgot to stop and care. His is a powerful and haunting recounting of the tragic final moments of Princess Diana, shedding light on both the human tragedy and the murky complexities surrounding her death. The description of the paparazzi turning the crash site into a grotesque spectacle really captures the cruelty of the moment rather than helping. They became voyeurs in a life-or-death situation, stripping dignity away from Diana in her most vulnerable state. The tangled web of investigations, delays, and suspicious circumstances deepens the tragedy. The revolving door of coroners and the delayed inquest only add to the public's mistrust. Diana's own fears, her chilling letters about possible sabotage, the revelations of phone tapping and surveillance, to paint a picture of a woman who felt increasingly threatened. Medical care questions, and the strangely quick reopening of the crash site raise further doubts about how the investigation was handled. And then the missing CCTV footage and conflicting witness accounts add layers of mystery. The official verdict labels it a tragic accident, but this passage highlights why so many remain unconvinced. It's a tragic story not only of loss, but also of unanswered questions and conspiracy theories that continue to haunt people decades later. What's your take on all of this? Do you feel the official investigation was thorough and transparent, or do the unanswered questions suggest something more sinister?